Hey, what's going on, Guardians? My name is The Black Link. Come back at you on Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. And you know what that means. It's time for this week's issue of the Bungie Weekly blog, This Week at Bungie. And man, what a twab it is. This one is absolutely chock full of incredible information. We're getting some Sandbox changes, we're getting some exotic updates, and we're even getting a sneak peek at some returning Foundry weapons and the forging system we're going to gain access to when the Witch Queen goes live later this month. So without further ado, there's a ton of news to talk about today. Let's go ahead and dive on into this week's TWAB. First things first, if you haven't heard, Bungie recently got acquired by Sony Interactive Entertainment. We've got a video covering that already up on the channel, so there will be a link to that down in the description box below. We also got a pretty awesome weapons trailer that showed off a little bit of the weapon forging and some exotics we're going to get access to when the Witch Queen goes live. If you missed any of that, of course, there's links to it down in the description box below. But that first notion of weapon forging, that's where this week's TWAB starts off. In a section titled Welcome to the Enclave, we learn about how we'll be building the weapons we're going to use to fight the Lucent Brood moving forward. Crafting a legendary weapon from scratch isn't a simple matter. Finding patterns, think weapon blueprints, collecting materials, and building your weapon is the starting point. After crafting your tool of destruction, you'll begin to unlock its full potential through combat. Early in the Witch Queen campaign, you'll be given an introductory quest that runs you through the ins and outs of crafting. In the first and second missions of the Witch Queen, free to all players, Guardians will uncover the Deep Sight ability and be introduced to the Enclave. This is where you'll begin to shape your first glaive, a brand new weapon archetype being introduced in the Witch Queen. All of the necessary materials will be provided for your first crafted weapon, but you'll also be given a short tutorial on how to find those materials for future crafting. A subset of weapons and archetypes will be craftable from the start, but more will be added in the future. In order to shape your future tools of destruction, that's a reference, you'll need to do a little bit of research first. Patterns are your first requirement. Some will be acquired through quest completions, while others can be earned by completing various gameplay objectives. Once you've earned your desired pattern, it can be crafted at any time with the required materials. Now, it's all about the mixings, and then we get some awesome screenshots of what the crafting system is going to look like here. After reaching the Enclave and crafting your first glaive, randomly rolled weapons throughout the game have a chance to drop with a new ability, Deep Sight Resonance. This will be used as you begin to target specific traits to craft. As an example, if you find a Deep Sight Resonance legendary auto rifle with the Rampage perk, you can complete an objective and extract the essence of the perk to then craft a weapon with Rampage or another perk that increases damage. And in the screenshot here, we see a Guardian holding a Deep Sight Resonance weapon, which will be noted by the red borders around it. Then we get a clip of a new submachine gun titled the Forensic Nightmare, showing what the Deep Sight Resonance is going to look like on the Weapon Inspection tab. This weapon possesses a resonance detectable by your Deep Sight ability. Use this weapon in combat or to complete activities in order to attune to this resonance and extract materials useful for shaping weapons. Next up is a screenshot of a brand new auto rifle, Come to Pass, which will show you what the Deep Sight Resonance will look like when you've completed this objective. Now, like current weapons, not every weapon pattern will be compatible with every trait, but you'll have a good list of traits to mix and match as you customize a given weapon to your desired specifications. It doesn't stop there though. Through the Enclave, you'll also be able to kick things up a notch and enhance your traits to strengthen their flavor. Next up, we get to learn about leveling your weapon and enhanced traits that you'll be able to apply. Once a weapon is crafted, Guardians may begin to increase its level by using it in activities and by defeating enemies. This is where the bulk of your crafting playtime will be. The more you use your weapon, the faster you'll unlock its full potential. Enhanced stats and traits can be unlocked when reaching higher levels, granting slight bonuses to your weapon's capabilities. Our goal through this system is to give players a reason to invest in their weapons, far beyond what masterworking could offer in the past. Each weapon can now act as a long-tail pursuit as you look to make your freshly crafted weapon the best it can be. And then we get a look at some of the enhanced intrinsic traits here for high-impact frames. Seeing that the weapon when used will earn an additional minor stat boost once you hit level 20. Interesting stuff there. I love that Bungie's kind of leaning further into the RPG notion of customizing your gear and putting stat boosts towards the type of build you want to play. They did it with armor before, and it looks like they're going in that direction with weapons. Good stuff. Anyways, they go on to state that it can be intimidating to start making decisions on how to build your weapons, so we're also giving you the ability to reshape your crafted weapons in the Enclave if you want to mix up the components of your weapons after you've finished crafting them. You can switch up what barrel, mags, or traits you choose so you don't feel like you got locked down one path forever. Incredible change there, being able to take something you've already fixed and maybe decide, oh, well, what if I want to run Encore instead? Being able to take that back and change some of the traits and perks on it. Fantastic. Really happy that Bungie's going to go in that direction. As Guardians begin to embrace this new system, you'll begin to see new legends rise. Some will prefer Haka and other foundries. Others may dabble in new weapons from a redacted source. We're excited to see which weapons you embrace. But there we go. That's the overview of crafting. And oh man, there's really interesting stuff in there, but it's only the beginning of the news that we've got today. Next up, we learn a bit more about mementos, which has to do more with appearances and activity-specific trackers. While the majority of your crafting experience will be dedicated to mixing, matching, and enhancing traits, there is also an opportunity for a bit of customization when it comes to appearances and activity-specific trackers. At launch, one weapon memento will become available for players to earn through Gambit, unlocking a Gambit-themed appearance and tracker. Rank up your weapon to max level, head back to the Enclave, and apply your freshly earned memento for some sweet flair. More of these will come online through Trials of Osiris and Grandmaster Nightfalls. We have more plans for mementos down the line and are excited to introduce a new in-game rarity cosmetic item for players to chase as they build out their new arsenal of weaponry. Then, we've got exotic crafting. Legendary weapons aren't going to be the only thing that you'll be able to craft. The upcoming Osteostriga exotic SMG and 3 class-unique exotic glaives can also be crafted through the Enclave, once you find their respective patterns, of course. And while legendary weapons can be crafted from the ground up, exotic crafting is more about fine-tuning something with a defined identity. You may have the opportunity to customize things like barrels or stocks while preserving the exotic look and feel. Love the sound of that, by the way. Looking for a longer range profile for the weapon, or opting to shred through your enemies up close and personal? Through the Enclave, you can do just that. And that is pretty much it for the news about the Enclave, this new area where we'll be able to craft our incoming arms of war. I'm really happy Bungie took the time to go through this week, because there were a lot of questions, especially with that weapons trailer they put up earlier in the week about how exactly this is going to work. I like that you're going to be able to basically go out and find weapon blueprints by playing the game. I like that this is mostly going to be tied to currencies that you get by playing the game. I love that you can basically reshape your weapon and reroll some of the traits on it at least. This is all sounding pretty good, and I can't wait to get my hands on it when Witch Queen goes live. But that's only the first part of the incredible amount of news we've got to cover today. Because next up, we've got some major Sandbox changes, and then even some major exotic changes coming as well. First things first, we get a sneak peek at what the pursuit weapon for the Witch Queen's launch period is going to be. It's called the Reckless Endangerment Shotgun. This weapon is coming in Season 16 and introduces the new Steady Hands perk for a massive handling boost after a kill, plus Snapshot. Bungie goes on to say that there will be several other shotguns in the release with more sought-after PvP and PvE perks. After that, we learn about something called Origin Traits, which will be a new feature coming to weapons post-Witch Queen. Every weapon that's new or returning in the Witch Queen will have an origin trait determined by its source in a third trait column, including all new legendary weapons and all returning Trials, Iron Banner, and Nightfall weapons. However, origin traits will only appear on new drops of a weapon. They won't be retroactively added to old drops. So yes, you are probably going to have to refarm some of your favorites to get access to these origin traits. These traits will vary in effect, but the guideline is that they either have very high uptime and medium power effects, or very low uptime with high power effects. There are going to be a total of 14 origin traits shipping with the Witch Queen in Season 16, and Bungie expects to ship around 3 new ones each season after Season 16. And they continue by saying that when they refresh old weapons from a given source, for example an existing raid or old pool of seasonal weapons, they may create new origin traits at the same time. So, what exactly are these origin traits going to look like? Well, thankfully, Bungie gave us a couple of examples here. For Trials of Osiris, you might see Alacrity, which gains increased reload, stability, aim assist, and range when you're the last living member of your fire team or running solo. That's plus 20 reload, plus 20 stability, plus 10 aim assist, and plus 10 range. Solo also includes solo lost sectors and rumble, for example. That's a pretty powerful bonus right on its own. Next up for Nightfall Strikes, you might see Stunning Recovery. Stunning a champion partially refills your magazine, triggers health regeneration, and improves recovery for a short duration. This effect will grant you 60 health instantly and plus 40 recovery for 3 seconds rather. That's a rather powerful effect. In Crucible, we've got One Quiet Moment, which grants increased reload speed when out of combat. This gives you a plus 40 reload stat when out of combat, which basically means you haven't dealt or received damage in 4 seconds. For strikes, we've got Vanguard's Vindication. Final blows with this weapon grant a small amount of health, small being 7 health. So basically, as long as you're getting kills, you're just continually siphoning health from your enemies. That's insanely good. It's something that I can recall being an effect in games like The Division, and it works really well in those games, and I can't wait to see how it works with something like a hand cannon here in Destiny. Being able to get some health back on every kill, not bad at all. Alright, anytime it makes sense due to the source activity, a weapon will have multiple origin traits selectable. For example, Nightfall weapons can select between Nightfall and Vanguard traits. Trials of Osiris weapons can select between Trials and Crucible traits, and the Pursuit weapon can select between Gambit, Vanguard, and Crucible traits, since it can be acquired from any of those activities. So there we go. Origin traits are going to be a new thing added to weapons when Season 16 launches on the 22nd. Definitely some exciting stuff there. But what are the weapons you're going to be actually getting this on? Well, if you're an old school fan of the Destiny weapon foundries, the Suroses, the Hakas, the Omolons, I've got some very good news for you. Many of those weapon foundries are coming back in a big way in the Witch Queen. In Season 16, Bungie's going to be replacing the old world loot pool with 12 new weapons in the style of the Destiny 2 Year 1 Foundry weapon sets, 3 weapons each from Suros, Omolon, Haka, and Viced foundries. Plus 1 foundry weapon each for Vanguard, Gambit, and Crucible. Each weapon will come with a foundry origin trait themed around that foundry's specific personality. For example, Suros is going to have Suros Synergy. Reloading will grant this weapon bonus handling and reduces incoming flinch for a short time. That's plus 40 to handling and 20% flinch resistance for 6 seconds after reloading. For Haka, you get Haka Breach Armaments. This weapon deals increased damage against vehicles, turrets, barricades, and stasis crystals. Turrets include stasis turrets, plus 15% to vehicles, and plus 30% to structures and turrets. That's going to be huge. If you're somebody who's always trying to pop those stasis structures, use a Haka weapon when this comes out. Then we've got Omolon, which comes with Omolon Fluid Dynamics. This weapon has increased reload speed and stability for the top half of the magazine. That stability is going to be at max plus 20, the reload is at max plus 30, and will reduce as the magazine gets lower. Finally, we've got Viced with Vice Stinger. Chance on damage to partially refill this weapon's magazine. So the Vice weapons, are always focused on never not firing. They're really fast rate of fire. It's stuff like submachine guns. Now with that, you're going to have a chance anytime you deal damage on completely refilling your magazine. That's a game changer, in my opinion. Incredible traits here. Cannot wait for some of these foundry weapons to come back. They go on to state that in addition to the Foundry origin trait, each Foundry weapon's perk pools lean into that Foundry's identity. Big damage for Haka, consistency for Suros, and ability tie-ins and weird stuff for Omolon, with unending firing for Viced. However, Foundry weapons that drop from a source aside from the Whirlpool can still switch between the Foundry trait and that source's origin trait that we already covered. So if you get one of these Foundry weapons from, say, Gambit, that Foundry weapon will have both the Gambit origin trait and the Foundry origin trait, and you'll be able to swap between the two of them. I love it. This is really, really cool sounding, and I can't wait for it. But alright, that's it for a lot of the big weapon news. Lastly, we've got some basic patch notes to go over before the Witch Queen goes out. There's a lot of stuff here, so I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible. First things first, kill trackers are going to become universal. You'll no longer need to masterwork a weapon in order to get access to a kill tracker. So those will be present on all weapons by default once Season 16 starts. Next up, following in the Armor Team's footsteps, weapon mods for legendary weapons are now free and instant to insert, so you no longer have to pay resources to slot and deslot mods. Then we got some changes to the special ammo economy in Crucible. Players now only drop one special ammo on death or equivalent, no matter how much they were carrying, as long as they weren't completely empty. And the maximum you can pick up off a special brick is 1 for a shotgun, fusion rifle, or sniper rifle, or equivalent for other weapons. Scavenger mods will add to this number as normal, but they'll be evaluating their place in the Crucible in the future. And Bungie has fixed yet another animation cancel, so you can't do the quick swap glitch anymore. Alright, next up we're going to see some archetype changes. First things first, for fusion rifles, they've increased high impact fusion rifle damage per bolt from 62 up to 64. And they've increased high impact fusion rifle PvE damage bonus from 15% to 20% to kind of bridge that gap between high impact fusions and PvE and something like the Cartesian coordinate, which is just blowing everything out of the water. Next, we've got some changes for breach-loaded grenade launchers. They've reduced blinding and concussion grenade damage by 25%. After that, we've got changes to rocket launcher archetypes. Basically, their damage is going to be seeing a scaling change. For precisions, the faster velocity ones with lower impact, their damage is going to be going down by a little bit, with a damage scaler of 0.95 times. For high impacts, theirs are basically going to be staying the same. For adaptives, they're going to be seeing a bit of a damage increase, and aggressive frames are going to be seeing the same damage increase. Hopefully it doesn't change things up too much. Next up, we've got some changes for sniper rifles. They've reduced the variance in aim assist scaling between low zoom and high zoom scopes for sniper rifles. The cone angle scaler has been increased by 25% on low zooms and reduced by 9% on high zooms. So basically, low zoom snipers are going to be getting a bit more of their aim assist back, and the high zoom snipers are going to be losing a bit of aim assist. Finally, for this section, we got some news about pulse rifles. They're taking slightly too long to kill red bar enemies in PvE, so they're getting a damage buff of 10% against minor enemies in PvE. But we've also got some exotic changes to talk about here as well. They start us off by saying exotic primary weapons and trace rifles aren't sufficiently stronger than legendaries for them to be worth bringing into hard PvE content. Definitely agree, particularly against minor enemies. And so, they're going to be seeing a major damage change. They've increased the exotic primary weapon damage versus minor enemies, that's red bar enemies, in PvE by 40%. 40%! That's a huge damage increase for exotic primary weapons. Fantastic news. Really happy about that. Next up, we see some changes for the king of PvP, the Chaperone. They've reduced its passive range buff from 2 meters to 0.5 meters, so it's not going to be mapping quite as far anymore. Next up, we've got Duality. They've reduced its passive range buff in slug mode, when you're aiming down the sights, from 1.25 meters to 0.5 meters. Pellet mode is going to be unaffected, and the On Black Wings damage buff no longer clears on reload. So you keep the damage buff, but you're losing quite a bit of range there with Duality. Next up, we've got changes for Teraba, which they state is extremely strong, but currently demands complete commitment with no weapon swapping. So here's what they're going to be doing to fix that. It now reduces perk progress by half instead of clearing it whenever you stow the weapon. And they've increased Ravenous Beast duration increases for damaging a player slightly. So you'll be able to use that perk longer, and rather than losing all your stacks by just swapping weapons, you're only going to lose half. That's a fair enough change. We'll have to see exactly how it works there. I know Bungie doesn't want to completely take away the negative benefits there, because Teraba would be ridiculously powerful if they did that, so we'll have to see how it plays after this change. Next up, Ruinous Effigy, my baby that Bungie destroyed long ago. And thankfully, they are doing something great with it. They state that Ruinous Effigy has been overdue for a look at its Beyond Light nerf, the nerf to damage dealt while guarding, so they're rolling that back. They do know that the other part of that nerf was to the airborne standard melee attack, but that hasn't been touched. So here's the change. They've increased the damage dealt by guarding with a transmutation spear by 66%, 30% against players in the Crucible. But note, transmutation sphere multi-kills now count for orb generation armor mods. Previously, only kills with the beam would trigger this. Great buff for the Ruinous Effigy. Really happy to have that guard damage back. After that, Lumina is seeing some changes. First things first, they've increased its range stat from 44 to 59, and they've increased the base stability stat from 46 to 56. Sorry, Thorn fans, Thorn is already strong and popular, and a similar buff would turn it into a monster in PvP, a la Year 1 of Destiny 1. But I'm really happy to see the Lumina getting some light here, since that gun has kind of been forgotten about for quite some time. Next up, Agger's Scepter. The Scepter's initial implementation used super regeneration scalars, which had very weird effects and activities that also had scalars, so they've rebuilt it to turn off regeneration while active, and have implemented a slower drain using a different method. Here's what they've done. They fixed being able to activate or continue using empowered mode while suppressed or stasis encased, and they've rebuilt the perk. It used to modify super charge rate. Now it freezes super recharge and deducts your super directly, fixing several issues with activities that change charge rate and outliers for recharge based on the intellect stat. And the super should now drain more slowly when you're empowered. Next up, Dead Man's Tale is seeing a bit of a pass. And they've done kind of an interesting change. They've reduced the Catalyst hipfire rate of fire from 150 RPM to 130 RPM. This is a fairly even-handed approach for the problem that Dead Man's Tale sort of presents to the Crucible right now. And I'm glad that Bungie isn't going heavy-handed when it comes to the nerf of it. We'll see if that RPM reduction actually matters. Next up, Lorentz Driver and Arbalest remain fairly hard to counter in PvP. One common complaint is how easily they can shoot through flinch. They'll be keeping an eye on these moving forward and have another change planned if needed. But for right now, they've increased the amount of flinch received for both of those weapons. Then, Forerunner is seeing a change. They've increased the ammo picked up from special ammo bricks from 2 to 3, and from 4 to 5 with a scavenger mod. But there we go, those are the exotic changes we've got here. After that, we're going to see some changes to legendary weapons. Yeah, there's even more in this TWAP to cover. This time we're going to start things off with hand cannons. The ban for legendary 140 RPM hand cannon aim assist ends at 84, and this extreme should be for hand cannons from a pinnacle activity like raids or trials. But when 150s were converted to 140s, many of their stats were either too low or too high. So they're adjusting the stats of these to be within the standard ranges for 140s. And here's how those changes are going to play out. Dire Promise is going to see +4 to its range, +3 to its stability, and -4 to its aim assist. Waking Vigil is going to see +6 to range, really needs that, thank you, +5 to stability, and -3 to its aim assist. The Jack Queen King is going to see +3 to range, +3 to stability, and -8 to aim assist. And finally, Spare Rations is getting +4 range, +4 stability, and -9 to its aim assist. Next up, Fellwinter's Lie is seeing a 15% spread angle increase, to make it a bit less consistent when shotgun mapping people. Then, in a change that I am very sad to see, this one breaks my heart, the Ikelos SMG is getting a major nerf. It's going to get +1 to its zoom, -5 to range, -7 to stability, -8 to handling, and -5 to aim assist. Oof, that's pretty much my favorite SMG in the game, and they are dragging it through the dirt. But you know what, I can't even lie, it does perform way better than most other SMGs. Hopefully it doesn't feel too bad when these changes go into effect. Alright, that's it for the legendary weapon changes. Next up, we've got some changes to perks. Starting with Hipfire Grip. Hipfire Grip now increases damage falloff, start, and end distances by 20% except on shotguns, sniper rifles, and fusion rifles. So you're going to be getting better damage falloff when you're hipfiring with the Hipfire Grip perk. Next up, Adagio. They've increased its duration from 5 seconds to 7 seconds. They've increased the damage bonus except on bows and fusion rifles from 25% to 30%, and it now adds +10 to the range stat. Finally, they added a timer to the buff text to make it easier to tell when it's going to expire. After that, we got changes to Dual Loader. They've reduced the reload stat penalty from -50 to -35. Next up, we've got Danger Zone, which they felt was a little bit too risky to use in a lot of cases. So they've reduced self-damage scalar for grenade launchers combined with other scalars. This ends up reducing self-damage with Danger Zone active from 1.25 times to 0.75 times. So hopefully you'll be killing yourself a little bit less with those grenade launchers. After this is a change a lot of you either really wanted to see or really didn't want to see. Tap the Trigger. This is indeed a meta-breaking perk on particular fusion rifles. And so, Bungie's going to be making some major changes to it. On fusion rifles only, Tap the Trigger will see reduced stability bonus from +40 to +10. They've changed the max recoil angle scaler from 0.5 to 0.875, and they've changed the error angle scale from 0.9 to 0.975. But this is only going to be on fusion rifles and is unchanged on all the other weapons, which will hopefully look to make tap the trigger a bit of a less broken perk on certain fusion rifles. Alright, after that we've got Headseeker, which wasn't working as intended on aggressive burst pulse rifles. So they've extended the buff duration from 0.17 to 0.3 seconds, which should make it more consistent moving forward. Alright, after that we've got Eager Edge, which is causing quite a bit of problems for Bungie's Sandbox right now. So here's what they're doing with the Eager Edge perk. They've reduced the lunge distance benefit while airborne to 25% and now caps maximum player airborne velocity to a fairly high value while active. No more going fast with Eager Edge. Though they go on to say that they don't want to remove the fun factor here, but they have a fresh raid coming in with the Witch Queen and want to ensure that they retain challenge behind their upcoming rewards. Meaning the go fast perk was probably going to break some encounters in Witch Queen and they don't want that to happen. I hope you guys are having fun with it now because it's going away soon. Finally, for the perks here, they're going to be shelving some perks for a while they work on them. These perks are going to include Bottomless Grief and Celerity. Both were attempts to inject some uniqueness into Trials of Osiris and Nightfall weapons, which they're now doing with Origin traits. They're also going to be shelving Underdog, Shield Disorient, and Air Assault. Though note that this may get a redesign in a future season. Alright, so that's it for all of the perks. The last thing we've got to talk about is a few things for the near future. And thankfully Bungie gave us a nice little list here. In Season 17, they're going to have a set of PvP-focused weapon changes, including new ways for players to build for flinch resistance, balanced tuning for primary weapons, looking at you pulse rifles, lightweights in particular, special weapon tuning, snapshot feeling mandatory on sniper rifles in PvP and other balance changes, another PvP special ammo economy change if needed, adjusting how zoom outliers affect the performance of a subset of weapons. For example, the scope column shouldn't be the most important thing on your sniper. This could take various forms, but the intent is to bring both high and low outliers towards the average. And they're adjusting several much requested exotics along with legendary perks. But alright, there we go, Guardians. That is it for the massive amount of information contained in this week's issue of the Bungie Weekly blog, This Week at Bungie. Insane news here, insane sandbox changes. Those Origin and Foundry traits sound amazing. I cannot wait to get my hands on those. I cannot wait to start forging weapons when the Witch Queen goes live on February 22nd. But that's the news. Those are my thoughts. Be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. And if you made it to the end, why don't you tell me what your favorite Destiny weapon foundry is? Are you a Haka man? Or is Suros more your speed? Be sure to let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. I'm out for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians, stay frosty.